Hey everyone,
Welcome back to Composed Out.
I'm Louie,
I'm Jordan.
and we're going to talk about technique today, the controversial topic,
Yes.
I suppose.
Well, yes.
I guess, is it?
Well, they're wrong and we're right, so yes.
We're starting off strong. Okay, so I was watching a video. Technically, I'm not going to name the channel, but they were talking about technique and the status of technique. And their context was slightly different. They were of different art form, but they were still in the realm of classical art. And knowing that we are musicians, kind of in the realm of classical music, right? We're not even going to go into the nomenclature of the whole thing because we really should come up with. I was about to say, how long do we have? We really should come up with a different nomenclature because, classical is, from historical perspective, it's a completely different thing. But that being said, when we say classical, we're just generally saying classical style of music. See, that doesn't even work either. But anyway.
No, yeah. Are we talking about Mozart or the entirety of the music repertoire? I think the latter is closer.
This is off to a great start. Before we even sat down, we were going to talk about like technique, and we said, okay, this video wouldn't be too long, and it's I already see this.
Buckle in, folks. That's all I'm gonna say. He said technique, and I said, all right.
So okay, Jordan. So I need to ask you. You teach piano. I teach piano. Oddly enough, for both of us being composers, we don't really teach composition. So we're not really going to talk about composition just yet. But in piano, the hot word is probably almost always technique.
Yeah.
People always talk about my technique is bad or, my technique is good, but I don't have a musicality. So I think we need to clarify some things.
Yeah.
So how would you define the word technique in piano?
I love this question because most people think one thing and other people think another, and there's we're already into controversy. Personally, the surface level definition that a lot of people end up going with is something like the mechanics of playing, right? That's what a lot of people tend to gravitate towards. And are they wrong? No. In the latter years here, technique has become more of a complex definition. So I view technique more as subservient to the desired result. It's an audible art form. The desired result is something that sounds good, right? And so technique is whatever you physically need to do to achieve the sound that you want to make, in my opinion.
That's a good definition. But see, I think this is one of the topics that I thought was very interesting because, like how people talk about competition, which is a whole different topic. But whenever I see or subscribe to certain music competitions, they always talk about it like technique is a bad thing, or there is a level of technique where you're being too technical without being artistic.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's the concept of like robotic playing, for example, where everything's perfect, but it's lacking that sort of like soul, I guess. And it's because I feel like some people really get caught up in technique and they're like, oh, I need to look a certain way. I need to, X, Y, Z. And then they just don't even think about what the sound they're making is. As far as like, think about like phrasing. That's not just a good tone. That's like direction of phrase. That's a different level of thinking. And so when you get caught up in all these physical things, you lose that. And the irony is people are striving for this quote unquote perfect technique, but technique's so personal. If you're copying someone else, you're not really doing yourself justice,
So based on your experience of teaching over the years, were there specific cases, of course, we're not going to name anybody, but were there specific cases where you as a student observed people trying to enforce certain type of technique based on what they've seen from other pianists? Or have you done similar thing where you were telling specific students, you should really listen to this pianist or watch this pianist because they have good technique?
Well, first of all, I know this is a little bit of a contradiction, but there are certain technical principles that I think everybody should strive for. Things such as, tension, a reduction of tension. If you're feeling super tense, whatever your technique is, you should probably avoid that. Generally, things like that. A lot of people generally accept curved fingers. We both know some flat-fingered pianists that are absolutely amazing, though. So that's a whole nother topic. But I've seen a lot of students play a lot of different ways. I have young students. Their technique is totally unique because of their anatomy. Your skeletal structure doesn't fully solidify, and you don't grow all your bones until you're around 18 to 20. And so those kids, they don't have the physical structure to achieve the best technique. And then I have some older students that are like retirement age, and they have arthritis, and that's a whole different technique too. So everybody, it's so personal. And so my goal as a teacher is to find what works for that individual, be it, if it's something anatomically that they need consideration for, or if it's something, like old habits die hard, and like they are capable of performing this better, but they just don't know how.
You mentioned curved finger versus flat finger. One of the things that I've come to understand is that we talk about technique like they're separate from the sound that comes out of it.
Yeah.
Right? So like one of the things that I've seen was people like to analyze people's technique, other pianists' technique, like they're isolated. Like, look at this person playing the way they do, and that's exactly what you want to do. But in my opinion, if that doesn't come with the sound that I want, what's the point of doing a certain thing just to make it look a certain way?
We're not dancers, right?
Right. Not only that, but Andras Schiff has said something very interesting in a recent interview. People like to watch him, not listen to him. And I think we're living in a day and age where technique is almost treated as a visual element rather than something that you just do to produce an auditory element.
Yeah.
So how do we combat that in some ways? Or do we need to combat it?
Well, there is a whole physical thing and like live performance, right? And I'm definitely not pro, literally dancing at the piano. Those who the guys who are just doing too much. I'm not supporting or advocating for that per se, but it is undeniable that there are people looking at you, and I might encourage students to loosen up a little bit or something. Generally, those kinds of things are causing a technical issue anyway. And so that's something you would want to work out anyway. There is a certain fluidity and a certain aesthetic to good technique visually, I think, usually. Like the release of tension after playing a note. If you just play a note and then come off of it, it's one thing. Whereas if you play it and, release the tension for real, it has a different, more elegant look. Conveniently, as a side effect, not as a goal.
So what are some of the common techniques that you have to sort of learn because they don't come naturally to us? So the one technique that I admittedly still can't do very well is I'm terrified of Chopin etude, the double third etude. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to play that because I just don't find that. People always talk about Chopin as the idiomatic composer for pianists, which tends to be true generally, but double thirds, I'm like,
it's a different world, man.
I don't know if I'll ever be able to achieve that. So there is definitely certain mechanical thing going on. What are some of the techniques that you can think of that you're like, this is not completely natural based on our hands, but we're forced to do it anyway?
Yeah, well, I love this question because it's different for everybody, right? This is where individuality plays a big part. And I'm kind of an outlier, should we say. So I've had a lot of technical struggles, and I've had a lot of teachers struggle to help me through those technical struggles. And it's because my hands are just not average. I have very large hands. So I have a 12 for.
Show it to the camera.
I feel like I need your hand for reference. Wait. No. Okay. We'll get it later. But yeah, I can play an 11th, but I can reach a 12th.
Right.
And so people usually tend to think, oh, it must be easy for you to. No, octaves are nothing. Yes, octaves are nothing. But you know what's not nothing? Chromaticism.
Right.
I struggle to fit between the black keys. I can do it, but it's a struggle. And so my technical issues are things that are small.
Right.
Like if I have to get small or if I have overlap or one of the biggest ones of my life is playing soft. I struggle with that. It's so hard for me to play soft. And I feel like that's just because of my natural size. Like dynamics are very weight involved.
Right.
Like your physical body weight. And then I also I don't know, I really struggled with it and teachers could never really get it to click for me. I'm getting better. I'll keep working on it. But
well, I don't think you ever get done with, like, if you just chase technique, I feel like there's no end to it almost. I don't know.
Well, that's why you should chase sound.
That's right.
Your technique will change.
That's right.
Because your body will change.
Right. So that's one of the things that I always think is kind of odd and interesting, because I think classical pianists, they sometimes get into, it's not necessarily anyone's fault, but it's easy to get in the trap of the thinking that my technique is always something that needs to improve. Mm-hmm. But really, if you're just playing pieces and if you're learning pieces and if you're making music, just go with what you're learning. And I feel like that's more natural progress that you can have in terms of technique.
Well, it's like anything else. If you want to get better at something, do it.
Right. But I feel like a lot of people might be spending too much time focusing on the mechanical side of technique.
Yes.
Instead of what sound do I want to produce? So here's the next question then. In the video that I mentioned earlier that I've seen of a different art form, but classical, they were talking about technique and something being overly technical that is not natural or realistic, and how people try to showcase that too much and compared it to circus, right? Mm-hmm. And I think you hear this often in classical music too, where classical musicians might say, well, that's just circus act, right? Something that's really virtuosic piece that showcases all the technical prowess that a pianist might have. And they're like, that's just circus. That's no longer music or artistic. And I thought for a second, this was the realization. Is circus not an art, first of all? And then second question is technique really isolated from musicality? So I think here's a good pause. What is good musicality and what is bad musicality, in your opinion?
Oh, gosh. You said technique first, and then you're going to drop this bomb? Okay. This has been, it's been talked about forever. I know back in ye olden days, people used to talk about good taste.
Right.
Which is pretty similar to what you're talking about right now, right? So here's the thing. You're yet again touching on a topic that's very personal.
Yeah.
Everybody's got different opinions, right?
Yeah.
Or they should. And that's part of the problem too, is people get so caught up in copying others, and they are worth copying. I mean, some of the people that get idolized, absolutely. I mean, I want to listen to their performances 100 times, and I wish I could play like that too. But at the end of the day, I'm not that person. And I feel like that's a realization that should be had more, you know? And that's honestly, with my technical struggles personally, that's been liberating for me to make me like, I don't have to try to be that because I'm not that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what is good, it's just kind of like beauty's in the eye of the beholder. You know, good music is in the ear of the listener.
Well, so that's the interesting part, right? I think we have a common ground in this sense, right? I think when we were having a conversation early in our friendship, one of the things that I think stood out to me was that we're both kind of oddballs in that sense. Like we are against the institutional idea of what is good music. I'm like, listen, I love Bach, and I think I would love to play Bach more. because I like Baroque music, so that's kind of like my sensibility, and I think that's generally a lot of people really appreciate Baroque style of music.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the Baroque. I love Baroque music. I love Bach. I love others too. I love Scarlatti.
Right.
But here's the thing. You do not want me to play those. And it's a wonderful technical point. Like those like, especially like polyphonic writing. First of all, just the brain load alone. I mean, take a 5-voice fugue and try to think about every voice, right? But, it's just, I love to listen to it. I'm really poor at executing the sound that I want to in that style. And I feel like it's a technical thing. My hands are really good at beefy chords.
No,
You know what I mean? Big old beefy romantic chords.
But Baroque may not have the similar texture at the keyboard.
It's a completely different feel.
Right.
Even though I love the sound of it.
Right. I think that's another thing is that's the hardest pill to swallow, I think, for pianists. There will be some repertoire pieces that you will find out that no matter how hard you try in that particular piece, there will always be someone who's playing better than you do.
Well, that's true for anything. Take the thing you're the best at. Somebody's doing it better. I'm sorry.
Right. So I think that's the interesting part is that when it comes to musicality, and this is, I think, going to be touched upon in different videos throughout our channel, but taste is personal, ultimately. It's like similar to food. Like food critics, like they're not the textbook definition of what they should be.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because there are key figures that have influenced technique.